train came to town, and all of a sudden, everyone knew where Tomball was.
Cars were an oddity beginning in Tomball.
We even had people come to church sometimes with on a horse and buggy.
Business was done on a handshake.
I remember we came up, I was a little 10, 11 years old, I guess, and came up to see the flares. It was a big deal.
When I came to Tomball, the principal handed me a textbook and a box of chalk and said, "Good luck."
We like Tomball Cougars, red and white, fight, fight, fight.
Once I started teaching here in Tomball, it was quite evident to me that the values of this community as well as my own matched perfectly.
In 1933, when that well blew in, that made news all over the country.
This is a conservative area, but it's also progressive. That's a very unique combination.
You hear young people, you hear old people, you hear those in between saying, Tomball's a hometown with a heart.
The pioneering spirit is alive in Tomball today, like it was 100 years ago.
Texas is rich in history, culture, and tradition, and the city of Tomball is no exception. During the 1830s, this community was known as Prairie Land. Many of our original settlers who moved here during that time still have descendants living in our community. In order to celebrate where we are today, it is important to revisit our past to truly appreciate what it means to be the hometown with a heart.
Thomas Henry Ball was an attorney and a congressman. He had been a congressman. At this particular time, he was doing legal work for the railroad, the Trinity and Brazos Valley Railroad. So he was very interested in filling the gap between the trains that came from Houston up through Cypress and the ones that went over to the east through Spring. And he thought it would be really helpful to the area to build track. By 1906, Thomas Ball's dream came true, and the railroad came through the east part of town, which had been named Peck earlier on after the very popular civil engineer from the railroad.
Tomball got its name in 1907 whenever William Malone bought the town. Thomas Henry Ball was a friend of Malone. Malone was a friend of Thomas Henry Ball, even though Thomas Henry Ball never lived here. But William Malone, that developed the town, knew that he was the one that routed the train through this area, and that he should receive recognition for it. So for that, when William Malone dedicated the town, platted the town, he changed the name from Peck to Tomball.
Main Street was a dirt road leading from the railroad area out toward the west. And there were, in the beginning, buildings, wooden buildings on both sides of the street, beginning with just a few, and then more were added as people settled in the area.
There weren't any good roads to town, and a lot of the produce was sent back and forth to Houston by train. And when the train came out, of course, you know the story, it just went up a few miles up the road and it stopped. And the roundhouse was right out of Tomball. And the roundhouse was as far as the engine went.
The one engine would bring up the cars, and leave them at the roundhouse and go back to the Houston area, and the heavier train then would attach cars and pick up any equipment and produce, that kind of thing, and would make the journey up through the rolling hills toward Fort Worth.
Cars were an oddity beginning in Tomball. It scared the horses. People complained as they were coming to town because they'd come in their wagons and in their buggies. But especially the car that belonged to Dr. Metzler, who was about the first car in Tomball. It had lanterns on the fenders, and it was rather noisy. It was made by Sears and Roebuck because it had a Sears license plate on it.
School first began in Tomball in 1908, where 12 students attended schools in the Woodman of the World building here in Tomball. In 1910, land was donated on Cherry Street, where a two-story red brick building was built where you had classrooms downstairs and an auditorium upstairs. In 1935, that building was torn down and was replaced in 1936 with the building that's still being used by ancillary services on Cherry Street. A year later, in 1937, Tomball became an independent school district. We continued to grow, and it was necessary at that time to build an additional school. So a high school was built along with classrooms and a gymnasium on Main Street, and that lasted until 1961, when a fire decimated part of that building.
One cold winter morning, I got a call. I was in Dearborn, had a phone out there, that the high school was on fire. The fire started in the attic above the administrative area, which was on the west end of the building, and that wasn't any closures in the attic, so that spread the fire all the way through to the where the gymnasium is. Houston Fire Department came out with a big fire truck, and they dropped their 4 6-inch hose into the swimming pool, which was already there at that time. This was one of the first areas that had a swimming pool at the school. And they dropped that hose into the swimming pool, and they flooded the fire and put it out without taking the gymnasium.
School was dismissed for 4 days, but being the community we were, churches opened their facilities and let us use their facilities.
Another time when the whole community rallied around and did what they could to make things happen for the kids of the community.
In 1933, black gold spewed out of the ground on Jacob Frederick William Cobb's property, which was southwest of Four Corners. Tomball's history was again forever changed.
There were some 25 or 30 oil companies at that time that was producing within a 5-mile radius of Tomball. And the largest of these was Tomball Oil, with about 350 families coming seeking employment, seeking a good livelihood, and with families that contributed to the betterment of a city.
They built a little town. They built a little camp, they called it. And these were real nice houses, and they had 2 camps. One was the lower camp, and the other was the upper camp, which was for the officials and officers and people like that in the company. And the lower camp was more or less the field people in the oil field. There was enough wells between the Rose Hill community and Tomball where, like I say, at night you could drive to Tomball without turning on your lights.
Religion was a very important part of life. For one thing, it was where a lot of socializing took place. And in the beginning, there were 3 churches in the area. They all met at the same building, the Woodman of the World building, I think it was. And they had different nights for meeting, but it was very much the custom for everybody, at least a good portion of the people, to go to all the meetings. So one little girl of one of the settlers here was taken on Tuesday night to one meeting, on Wednesday to another, and Thursday to still another. So she felt that she belonged to all of them, and they were just part of life.
By the mid-1940s, Tomball was growing, and there was a need for more health care in the community. A.B. Klein was a very progressive thinker during that time. He organized a committee of people to support the development of a hospital.
With group meetings, they decided that we needed a hospital here. So they set up a program where he went around the community and invited people to put up a certain amount of money, $100 or $200, whatever it was, to build a building. And so they got enough money together to build a hospital, a small, I think, 27-bed hospital.
Dr. Norman Graham and Dr. Joe Warren eventually purchased Tomball Hospital. Years later, that hospital was sold. Another committee was formed, and a 10-acre site was purchased for the Tomball Community Hospital, which eventually blossomed into the Tomball Regional Medical Center.
There's so much changes in the medical field now that it's hard to keep up with everything. But to be in the top echelon of the hospital in the whole country is a good feeling.
Growth is everywhere in Tomball. New subdivisions are being developed. New schools are being built. Tomball College continues to increase its enrollment. Our medical center is one of the best in the nation. And our community churches support the spiritual well-being of those who call Tomball home. It's all an indication that the spirit that founded Tomball in 1907 is alive and well today in the 21st century. We're a multicultural community and equally diverse in our economic development. Our commitment to preserving history and heritage continues based on the founding spirit of a man whose vision brought the railroad to Tomball. For that, we will always be grateful to Thomas Henry Ball. Little did he know that he was the founding father of a hometown with a heart.
I love to call Tomball home. We have the pleasure of living in the country, driving 5 minutes to a small town and maybe another 30 minutes to downtown Houston, an hour to the beach. Not many can say that.
We have beautiful trees. It's in our city. And the most friendliest people in the world.
It's been an awful interesting and exciting time to have had the opportunity to be involved in the community and the area.
We provide for each student's educational needs, and we believe that education is a lifelong learning experience. And we dedicate all of our energy into providing what our students need to be successful.
Many of the younger ones go off to college. They may even work elsewhere for a while. But they have a great inclination to come back here and settle and raise their families. I think that speaks very well for the area.
I really think more important than anything, as families, as business people, as individuals, we have to instill our community mindedness in our young people. We have to develop and continue to teach our children patriotism and core values. And I think with that, then we've got a really bright future.
Tomball has its own city limits, its own incorporated city, and our main challenge is to make sure that as Houston grows and Tomball may be swallowed up in that growth, that Tomball and its people remain the good-hearted, friendly, hometown with the heart people that they are today.